Beneath the quiet fields and ancient stone walls of medieval Europe, an entire hidden world thrived in the shadows. Picture this: miles of secret tunnels, carved by hand, snaking underground like veins connecting monasteries to remote rebel hideouts. These weren't just simple passageways, they were lifelines, built to safeguard everything from sacred manuscripts to the lives of those fleeing persecution. For centuries, these labyrinthine networks remained one of history's best-kept secrets, shielding the vulnerable and preserving ideas that might otherwise have been lost to time. What's astonishing is how these tunnels functioned as more than just escape routes. They were the medieval equivalent of underground highways, bustling with covert activity. Monks used them to transport priceless manuscripts during times of war. Rebels plotted revolutions in their hidden chambers, and entire communities found refuge beneath the earth when danger loomed above. The sheer scale of these networks, often stretching for miles beneath castles and forests, reveals a level of ingenuity and determination that's hard to fathom today. How did they build them without modern tools? Who were the brave souls who navigated these pitch-black corridors, knowing one wrong turn could mean being lost forever? This is the story of resilience, faith, and defiance, a tale written not in ink but in stone and soil. As we peel back the layers of history, we'll uncover how these tunnels became the silent witnesses to some of the most pivotal moments of the Middle Ages. From the whispered prayers of monks safeguarding their libraries to the hushed meetings of rebels planning their next move, every corner of these passageways holds a secret waiting to be told. So let's step into the darkness together and discover the forgotten world that once pulsed beneath the feet of kings, soldiers, and saints. The journey begins now. To understand why monks went to such extraordinary lengths to carve these hidden passageways, we have to step back into the turmoil of early medieval Europe. Monasteries weren't just peaceful retreats, they were treasure houses packed with gold, sacred relics, and most importantly, books. In an age when literacy was rare, these handwritten manuscripts were irreplaceable, containing everything from religious texts to ancient scientific knowledge. When Viking raiders began sweeping across Europe in the 8th and 9th centuries, monks faced an impossible choice: defend their walls and risk annihilation, or find another way to survive. The solution was as ingenious as it was desperate. Using simple tools like chisels, hammers, and candlelight, they began hollowing out the earth beneath their feet. These weren't haphazard burrows, but carefully planned labyrinths with twisting corridors, dead ends, and hidden chambers. Some tunnels led to nearby forests or rivers, while others connected to neighboring monasteries, creating an underground network of escape and communication. The design was deliberate. Low ceilings forced invaders to crouch, slowing them down, while multiple branching paths disoriented anyone unfamiliar with the route. Monks could vanish in moments, slipping into the darkness with their most precious scrolls tucked under their robes. One of the most remarkable examples lies beneath the Abbey of St. Gaul in modern-day Switzerland. Archaeologists have uncovered a tunnel system so extensive, it suggests the monks could have evacuated their entire library in less than an hour. Hidden trapdoors in the scriptorium led straight to the tunnels, where grooves in the walls still mark the paths where shelves once held chests of manuscripts. Elsewhere, like the monastery of Monte Cassino in Italy, tunnels doubled as secret chapels, allowing worship to continue even when the abbey above was under siege. These spaces weren't just functional, they were sacred, echoing with chants and prayers even in the darkest hours of war. But building them was a feat of endurance. Without modern engineering, monks relied on trial and error, reinforcing weak spots with stone buttresses and diverting groundwater with drainage channels. Some tunnels took generations to complete, with each new wave of monks expanding them further. The work was grueling, dangerous, and often done in secret, because if word of these hidden passages leaked out, they'd be useless. That secrecy is why many tunnels remained undiscovered for centuries, their entrances concealed beneath altars, wells, or even gravestones. What's striking is how these tunnels reflect the monks' dual role as both spiritual guides and pragmatic survivors. They weren't just hiding, they were preserving a flame of knowledge that might have otherwise been extinguished. Every manuscript smuggled through those tunnels carried ideas that would later fuel the Renaissance, the scientific revolution, and the modern world. So when we walk through the ruins of these monasteries today, it's worth remembering the true heart of these places wasn't just in their towering chapels, but in the silent, shadowed paths beneath them. The engineering behind these medieval tunnels is nothing short of breathtaking when you consider the limitations of the time. Imagine teams of monks and laborers working by flickering torchlight, chiseling through solid rock with nothing but iron picks and wooden shovels. Every inch of progress demanded back-breaking effort, yet they managed to carve out passages so precise that many still stand strong after 1,000 years. What's even more impressive is how they adapted Roman engineering principles like the use of arches for stability and combined them with clever medieval innovations to create tunnels that could withstand sieges, floods, and the relentless passage of time. Take the ventilation systems, for example. Unlike crude burrows, these tunnels were designed for long-term use, with carefully placed air shafts disguised as natural fissures or hidden among tree roots above ground. Some networks even included wind catchers, subtle downward-sloping passages that channeled fresh air deep into the labyrinth without betraying their location. And then there were the hidden doors, ingenious pivoting stone slabs that blended seamlessly into the walls, operated by counterweights or concealed levers. At the Abbey of Cluny in France, archaeologists found a door so perfectly balanced that a child could open it with one hand, yet it appeared as solid as the surrounding rock when closed. But perhaps the most awe-inspiring feature was their ability to manage water. In regions with high groundwater, builders lined tunnels with waterproof clay or dug intricate drainage channels that redirected seepage away from critical passages. The Cistercian monks of Fountains Abbey in England went a step further, engineering an underground aqueduct that fed fresh spring water into their hidden chambers, a lifeline during prolonged sieges. These weren't just holes in the ground, they were masterclasses in subterranean survival. The real marvel, though, lies in how they accomplished all this without blueprints or surveying tools. Instead, they relied on oral traditions and simple measuring cords, passing techniques from one generation to the next. Mistakes were costly, a misaligned tunnel could collapse or flood, so every decision was deliberate. Some scholars believe they used candle smoke to test airflow or hung plumb bobs to ensure straight vertical shafts. It's a humbling reminder of what human ingenuity can achieve, even in the face of seemingly impossible odds. Today, when we walk through these tunnels, we're not just seeing ancient stone, we're witnessing the quiet determination of people who refused to let their light be extinguished. Every chisel mark, every carefully placed arch tells a story of resilience, and while modern engineers might marvel at their precision, what truly endures is the lesson they left behind. Sometimes the greatest strength lies not in towering walls, but in the hidden paths beneath them. When religious persecution swept across Europe, these hidden tunnels transformed from quiet escape routes into lifelines of defiance. Picture the terror of monks hearing the distant rumble of soldiers approaching, knowing that within hours their sacred spaces could be reduced to rubble. In those desperate moments, the tunnels beneath their feet became sanctuaries. Sacred relics illuminated manuscripts. Even the monks themselves vanished into the earth, slipping through secret doors as axes splintered the monastery gates above. The dissolution of the monasteries under Henry VIII offers one of the most dramatic examples, as royal commissioners stormed abbey after abbey, seizing gold and smashing altars. Catholic priests and loyalists turned the tunnels into a shadowy resistance network. At Sawley Abbey in Lancashire, locals whispered of a ghostly procession, priests moving like spirits through midnight tunnels, smuggling chalices and prayer books to sympathetic farmhouses. Some passages led to remote caves along riverbanks where clergy could hide for weeks, continuing baptisms and masses in secret. These weren't just hiding places, they were underground churches, keeping faith alive when it was punishable by death. But the defiance went deeper than physical survival. In Bavaria, monks facing Protestant reformers hollowed out chambers beneath their chapels to hide life-sized statues of saints, statues that would later re-emerge when Catholicism was restored. In Spain, during the Moorish conquests, Mozarabic Christians used tunnels to preserve ancient liturgies, chanting in hidden crypts while mosques rose above them. Every rescued manuscript, every concealed relic, was a quiet rebellion against eradication. What's haunting is how these tunnels mirror the resilience of the human spirit. In the pitch-black corridors, you can almost hear the echoes, quickened footsteps, the rustle of parchment, a whispered prayer. They remind us that faith, in its darkest hours, doesn't always blaze like a torch. Sometimes it glows like a single candle in a buried chamber, waiting for the moment it can safely light the world again. Rebels and outlaws quickly realized these monastic tunnels could serve purposes far beyond their original intent. While monks built them to protect sacred knowledge, others saw their potential for stealth and survival. In the rugged highlands of Scotland, where English forces hunted down resistance fighters, these hidden passageways became vital escape routes. William Wallace himself is said to have used tunnels beneath abbeys like Dryburgh and Melrose to disappear after raids, reappearing miles away like a ghost. The same stone corridors that once echoed with Gregorian chants now muffled the footsteps of men plotting revolution. Eastern Europe's underground networks took on even greater significance during waves of invasion. When Mongol hordes or Ottoman armies swept through villages, locals would vanish into labyrinthine tunnels beneath churches and monasteries. Some passages led to camouflaged forest bunkers, while others connected to remote mountain caves. In places like Romania's Transylvanian Alps, entire communities could live underground for months, lowering supplies through disguised shafts. The tunnels weren't just hiding places, they were headquarters. Rebel leaders coordinated attacks from candlelit chambers, using messenger runners to relay coded information through the network. What's fascinating is how these groups adapted monastic engineering to their own needs. In Bohemia, Hussite rebels reinforced tunnels with timber beams to withstand cannon vibrations during sieges. Welsh freedom fighters dug foxhole side passages, narrow offshoots where archers could ambush pursuing English soldiers. The tunnels became living things, evolving with each new crisis. Even the symbols carved into walls tell a story. Crosses left by monks now mingled with rebel insignias, a silent testament to the changing hands of these shadowy highways. Perhaps the most poignant use was by persecuted minorities. Jewish communities during the Spanish Inquisition converted crypts beneath monasteries into secret synagogues, their worship hidden beneath the very institutions that sought to erase them. In France, Waldensian Christians branded as heretics used tunnels to smuggle banned translations of the Bible. For For these groups, the earth itself became a protector, shielding not just bodies but identities. The tunnel's true power lay in their silence. No manifestos or battle cries, just the quiet scrape of a displaced stone, the faint glow of a shielded lantern, and the unshakable will to endure. This duality, sacred refuge and rebel stronghold, reveals why these tunnels haunted the powerful. Kings and inquisitors could burn villages or arrest dissidents, but the earth kept its secrets. Every collapsed entrance they discovered only hinted at dozens more, twisting unseen beneath their feet. It's a reminder that oppression rarely accounts for the ingenuity of those who dig not just to hide but to return. The walls of these underground passageways hold more than just the weight of centuries. They whisper in a language of symbols. Among the rough-hewn stones, you'll find delicate carvings of crosses, not just as markers of faith but as coded directions. A cross tilted slightly to the left might indicate a hidden chamber, while one encircled by a ring could signal a dangerous dead end. These weren't random scratches, they were a carefully crafted lexicon, meant to guide the initiated while confounding invaders. Some of the most intriguing symbols align with the heavens. In the tunnels beneath Chartres Cathedral, a narrow shaft pierces the darkness at just the right angle to catch the sunrise on the summer solstice, illuminating a single carved rose on the far wall. For monks who knew the secret, it was a celestial clock marking time in a world without calendars. Elsewhere, labyrinthine patterns mirror constellations, suggesting these tunnels were more than escape routes. They were sacred maps tying the earth to the stars above. Then there are the inscriptions, etched in languages so obscure that scholars still debate their meanings. At Mont Saint-Michel, a single phrase, sub terra lux, repeats in shadowy corners, light under the earth. Was it a promise of divine protection or a practical reminder to keep torches lit? The ambiguity is deliberate. Many of these messages were designed to be read in layers, with surface-level piety masking deeper, more dangerous truths. A benediction carved near an exit might double as a rebel's rallying cry, its true meaning known only to those who dared to resist. Even the tunnel's layouts held symbolic weight. Circular chambers weren't just functional gathering spaces, they mirrored the shape of monastic cloisters, turning the underworld into a shadow abbey. Zigzagging passages evoked pilgrimage routes, transforming a frantic escape into a spiritual journey. Every curve and corner was a silent sermon, a reminder that faith could flourish even in darkness. The greatest mystery, though, lies in what we've yet to decipher. In the tunnels of Kilwinning Abbey in Scotland, a series of interlocking rings has baffled historians for decades. Some say they represent the Holy Trinity, while others insist they're a coded alliance between rebel factions. Without the key, the truth remains buried, just like the tunnels themselves. These symbols weren't meant for us. They were whispers between generations, a conversation carved in stone, waiting for the right moment to be understood. Among the most tantalizing mysteries of these underground networks are the treasures they were built to protect, and the ones that may still remain hidden. Monasteries didn't just safeguard lives, they buried fortunes in gold, sacred relics, and irreplaceable manuscripts, secreting them away in chambers so well concealed that some have never been found. Take the legendary hoard of Reichenau Abbey, where chronicles speak of a golden crucifix and a dozen jeweled gospels lowered into a tunnel vault during a 9th century Viking raid. When the danger passed, the monks who knew its location had perished, leaving the treasure's fate to speculation. Centuries later, a farmer plowing his field stumbled upon a tunnel entrance, but the walls collapsed before he could explore further, sealing the mystery once more. Not all lost treasures stayed lost, though. In 2008, workers restoring a medieval chapel in Austria broke through a false wall and found a cavity stacked with oak chests. Inside were 700 silver coins, a bishop's mither studded with amethysts, and most remarkably, a perfectly preserved copy of St. Augustine's City of God, its pages untouched by time. The tunnel had been sealed since the 1500s, likely to hide the valuables during the Ottoman Wars. Finds like these fuel the imaginations of historians and treasure hunters alike. Could other vaults still lie undisturbed, their contents waiting beneath layers of dust and forgotten stone? The clues are often hidden in plain sight. Cryptic entries in monastic ledgers hint at buried wealth, 30 marks entrusted to the earth beneath the third arch, or the ivory reliquary placed where the candle's shadow falls at matins. Some believe these were literal instructions meant to guide future generations to recovery. At Clonmacnoise in Ireland, a 15th century scribe described hiding a gospel book where the fox watches over the saint, a riddle that led to the 2014 discovery of a manuscript buried in a fox-shaped niche beneath a statue of Saint Kieran. Yet for every treasure found, countless others evade detection. The lost library of the Cathars, said to contain forbidden texts on alchemy and heresy, was reportedly walled up in tunnels beneath Montségur Castle. Despite centuries of searching, not a single page has surfaced. Similarly, the fabled Golden Gospels of Lindisfarne, carried into the tunnels during a Viking raid in 793, have never been recovered. Were they smuggled to safety and later lost, or do they still rest in some forgotten chamber, their metal pages gleaming in the dark? What makes these stories so compelling isn't just the glitter of gold or the allure of ancient books, it's the human drama behind each hidden trove. These were acts of desperation, faith, and sometimes defiance. A silver chalice buried to keep it from being melted down for coin. A banned translation of the Bible concealed beneath a monastery's very foundations. Every undiscovered treasure is a frozen moment in time, a snapshot of someone's hope that the light would one day return. And who knows, perhaps the next great discovery is only a shovel's strike away, lying silent beneath centuries of earth and legend. Modern technology has peeled back the earth like the pages of an ancient manuscript, revealing secrets medieval builders never imagined would be uncovered. Ground-penetrating radar sends pulses through the soil, painting a ghostly image of hollow spaces below tunnels twisting like roots beneath fields and foundations. In Austria's Melk Abbey, this technology exposed a hidden branch stretching over 2 miles to a nearby convent, its path following the contours of long-vanished streams. Archaeologists now suspect these networks weren't just isolated escape routes but part of a vast, interlinked system, medieval Europe's shadowy underground equivalent of the Silk Road. Drones equipped with thermal cameras have added another layer to the mystery. Flying over the Welsh countryside near Tintern Abbey, researchers spotted subtle heat signatures where grass grew slightly thinner, tracing the outline of a collapsed tunnel no surface survey could detect. When cross-referenced with centuries-old monastic ledgers mentioning the Brethren's Passage, they realized they'd found a lost artery connecting 3 separate monasteries. These aerial eyes reveal patterns invisible to those standing on the ground, showing how strategically these tunnels were placed near rivers, forests, and other natural landmarks that provided cover. But the real game-changer has been 3D laser scanning. In Portugal's Alcobaça Monastery, scanners mapped a labyrinth so precise it showed individual chisel marks on the walls, evidence of the painstaking years laborers spent carving through bedrock. The scans also uncovered something chilling: narrow side tunnels barely wide enough for a child, likely used as listening posts to detect approaching enemies. Some passageways sloped downward at exact 5-degree angles, a deliberate design to prevent torch smoke from pooling. These details prove these weren't haphazard digs but meticulously planned feats of engineering. Perhaps the most startling revelation came from combining these technologies. In the Czech Republic, radar and LiDAR scans revealed tunnels linking 7 monasteries across a 50-mile radius, some passing directly beneath fortified towns. Historians now believe these were used not just for emergencies but for covert communication, with coded messages passed hand to hand through the darkness. The discovery rewrites our understanding of medieval alliances, showing how religious communities operated as a unified resistance network during times of persecution. What keeps archaeologists awake at night is the realization that we've only scratched the surface. Less than 20% of Europe's known monastic sites have been thoroughly scanned. In the Scottish Highlands, rumors persist of a tunnel system connecting every major abbey, a subterranean rebel highway used during the Jacobite uprisings. Meanwhile, advances in AI analysis are decoding patterns in old construction records, hinting at hidden chambers beneath familiar landmarks. Every new tool peels back another layer, proving that the earth still holds stories the history books never knew to tell. The true scale of this underground world may still be waiting in the dark, just beyond the reach of our flickering modern light. France's Mont Saint-Michel rises from the sea like a stone mirage, its Gothic spires piercing the sky, but the real marvel lies beneath the tourist-filled cloisters. A maze of tunnels winds through the bedrock, some wide enough for horse-drawn carts, others so narrow you must turn sideways to pass. Originally dug by monks to transport supplies during high tide, these passageways took on darker roles during the 100 Years' War. Soldiers used them to move undetected between defensive positions, while smugglers later exploited hidden seaward exits to slip contraband past royal tax collectors. Today, guides point out grooves in the walls where torches once flickered, but few visitors realize they're walking atop a submerged highway that once buzzed with clandestine activity. Across the Channel, England's Waverley Abbey hides an even more astonishing secret. The Cistercian monks here didn't just build tunnels, they engineered an entire underground duplicate of their abbey. Excavations revealed chapels, scriptoriums, and even a replica chapter house buried beneath the ruins visible today. Some scholars believe this was a contingency plan. If Henry VIII's forces destroyed the surface monastery, worship could continue uninterrupted below. The most chilling discovery, a network of whispering tunnels, curved shafts that carried voices over long distances, allowing coded warnings to travel faster than approaching soldiers. Then there's the Odessa catacombs in Ukraine, a staggering 2,500-kilometer labyrinth originally dug by Orthodox monks quarrying limestone. When Soviet partisans needed hideouts during World War II, they expanded these tunnels into a subterranean city complete with hospitals and printing presses. The walls still bear charcoal sketches of saints alongside communist slogans, a surreal collision of sacred and revolutionary fervor. But perhaps no tunnel carries more intrigue than the Passetto di Borgo in Rome. This elevated passage linking the Vatican to Castel Sant'Angelo looks like a simple covered walkway until you notice the murder holes in its ceiling. During the sack of Rome in 1527, Pope Clement VII fled through this corridor as mercenaries stormed the city, dropping boiling oil through those very openings to slow his pursuers. It's a stark reminder that these weren't just hidden corridors, they were instruments of survival where a single misstep could rewrite history. What binds these sites together isn't just stone and shadow, it's the human stories etched into their walls. A smuggler's tally scratched near a tunnel exit, a child's handprint preserved in clay where a family once hid. These silent witnesses remind us that courage and desperation often leave their deepest marks where no one thinks to look. By the 16th century, the hum of activity in these underground passageways began to fade. The world above was changing. Artillery could now reduce castle walls to rubble in hours, making tunnels less viable as escape routes. Monarchs consolidated power, shrinking the influence of monasteries that once operated like independent states. Cobbled roads stretched across kingdoms, allowing armies and merchants to move swiftly in daylight without relying on hidden paths. The very reasons these tunnels were built were vanishing, and without constant maintenance, their ceilings sagged, their supports rotted, and entrances collapsed under layers of dirt and neglect. Yet abandonment didn't always mean oblivion. In the wine-growing regions of France, enterprising villagers turned crumbling monastic tunnels into perfect wine cellars, their cool, stable temperatures ideal for aging barrels. The same passageways that once hid sacred relics now cradled vintages that would grace royal tables. Elsewhere, like beneath the streets of Prague, disused tunnels became impromptu shelters for the poor, their walls blackened by centuries of makeshift fires. What was once a rebel's refuge might now house a tinker's workshop or a child's secret playroom, but the most enduring afterlife of these tunnels unfolded in the realm of story. Whispers of their past morphed into legend tales of spectral monks pacing corridors with ghostly lanterns, or of treasure guarded by curses. In Germany's Harz Mountains, locals spoke of a silver train that rumbled through hidden tunnels on moonless nights, laden with ore stolen by long-dead miners. Scottish folklore wove tunnels into the mythos of the Knights Templar, claiming they'd smuggled their fabled wealth beneath Rosslyn Chapel. Even the Brothers Grimm collected a variant of the Pied Piper, where the children lured away supposedly disappeared into Hamelин's labyrinthine tunnels. Some legends held startling grains of truth. When a sinkhole opened in a Cornish field in 1897, it revealed a tunnel packed with smugglers' brandy barrels, exactly as the old tales had described. In Austria, a farmer digging a well struck a buried tunnel lined with skeletal hands pressed against the walls, a macabre echo of local stories about prisoners walled alive. The line between history and myth blurred so completely that even today, archaeologists consult centuries-old folktales for clues to lost entrances. What's poignant is how these stories became a kind of collective memory. When the tunnels themselves crumbled, the fears and hopes they represented of sanctuary, rebellion, and mystery lived on in fireside tales. They remind us that even when stone erodes, human imagination rebuilds, ensuring that these hidden worlds never truly vanish. They simply wait, half-remembered, for someone to shine a light into the darkness once more. Long after the last monk vanished into the shadows and the final rebel whispered their plans underground, the tunnels lived on, not in stone but in story. Villagers who'd never set foot in those passageways could describe them in vivid detail, spinning tales of ghostly processions winding through the darkness, their lanterns flickering with an otherworldly glow. In the Scottish Highlands, they spoke of the Green Abbot, a spectral figure said to glide through the tunnels beneath Melrose Abbey, his robes rustling like dry leaves as he searched for a stolen relic. Over in Germany, mothers warned children away from certain hillsides, whispering that the singing monk lurked below, a tragic figure whose echoed chants could lure the curious into endless labyrinths. What's fascinating is how these legends often held fragments of truth. The golden fox, said to guard treasure in Welsh tunnels. Archaeologists later found a fox-shaped niche containing a jeweled reliquary, just as the old tales described. The door that only opens for the pure of heart, in Bohemian folklore, turned out to be a cleverly balanced slab that required knowledge of a hidden lever. These weren't just flights of fancy, they were distorted memories passed down so many times that history blurred into myth. Some stories took on lives of their own. In Ireland, the legend of St. Kevin's Tunnel claimed it stretched from Glendalough to Rome, with pockets of holy air that kept travelers alive for months. The reality, a modest escape route barely a mile long, but the exaggeration reveals how these tunnels became metaphors for faith itself, endless, mysterious, and leading to salvation. Meanwhile, alpine villagers spoke of tunnels that connected to the mythical kingdom of Agartha, a paradise beneath the earth. When geologists mapped the region centuries later, they discovered the passages did, in fact, intersect with vast natural cavern systems, proof that even the wildest tales often spring from a seed of reality. The most enduring legends, though, were those of guardians. Not all protectors were human, according to folklore. In Cornwall, locals avoided certain caves, convinced they were watched by the Knocker, a mischievous spirit who'd collapse tunnels on intruders. Oddly enough, medieval records mention monks using counterweighted stones to trigger cave-ins during invasions. Coincidence, or did the Knocker begin as a cautionary tale to keep people from stumbling onto rebel hideouts? What these stories share is a sense of reverence not just for the tunnels but for the secrets they held. Even as the structures crumbled, the legends ensured their purpose wasn't forgotten. A smuggler's route became a ferry path. A hidden chapel turned into a gateway to the underworld. The tales transformed cold stone into something alive, pulsing with the collective imagination of everyone who ever wondered what might lie beneath their feet. And isn't that the true magic of these places? They remind us that the past is never really buried. It just waits silently for someone to listen. Monasteries weren't just sanctuaries for prayer. They were nerve centers of information, buzzing with secrets that could topple kings or shift the tide of war. Behind the solemn chants and copied manuscripts, a shadow game unfolded. Monks, with their unimpeachable reputations and ability to travel freely, became perfect spies. Their robes were a disguise, their piety a shield, and their tunnels a clandestine highway for whispers that shaped empires. Take the case of the Cistercian monks during the 100 Years' War. Neutral in theory, their abbeys straddled the warring territories of England and France. Yet beneath the surface, their tunnels hummed with coded messages. A monk delivering a psalm book to a neighboring abbey might carry parchment layered with invisible ink, orders for troop movements or maps of enemy fortifications. At Clairvaux Abbey, historians uncovered a ledger disguised as a liturgical calendar, its margins filled with cryptic notations about supply routes and noble alliances. The monks didn't just observe the conflict, they weaponized their neutrality. Even the Vatican relied on these networks. During the papal schisms, when rival claimants fought for the throne of St. Peter, loyalist monks used tunnels to smuggle intelligence out of besieged cities. One notorious example comes from Avignon, where a Benedictine named Brother Anselm posed as a scribe copying manuscripts, while secretly documenting the weaknesses in the anti-pope's defenses. His reports slipped into hollowed-out candle holders, traveled through a chain of monasteries before reaching Rome. The tunnels made it possible. No borders to cross, no suspicious couriers, just trusted hands passing secrets through the dark. But the most audacious spies were those who played both sides. In 15th century Burgundy, a Franciscan friar named Willem van der Heyden ran a veritable spy ring from his cloister's cellar. His tunnels connected to the city's guild halls and even the ducal palace, allowing him to trade secrets with French and Burgundian factions alike. When caught, his defense was ingenious. He claimed confessionals heard in the tunnels were protected by sacred privilege. The gambit worked. He was exiled rather than executed, proving how effectively monks could exploit their spiritual authority. What's striking is how these operations blurred the line between divine duty and political cunning. A monk might kneel in prayer by day, then by candlelight cipher reports for a distant cardinal. The same hands that turned the pages of scripture could forge seals or alter documents. Yet this wasn't mere betrayal, it was survival. In an era when monasteries depended on royal patronage, having leverage over powerful patrons meant protection. A well-timed secret could secure tax exemptions, land grants, or even military aid when marauders threatened the abbey gates. The tunnels themselves became tools of psychological warfare. Rumors of their existence sowed paranoia. Enemies never knew if their plans were overheard by a monk hidden behind a thin wall or a servant who'd slipped into the shadows. At Corvey Abbey in Germany, a tunnel shaft directed sound upward into the abbot's quarters like a medieval listening device. Visitors speaking in the courtyard might unknowingly have their words carried straight to the abbot's ears, a trick that likely unnerved more than one overconfident diplomat. This shadow war left few written records, but the fragments we have paint a vivid picture. In the archives of Monte Cassino, a single parchment lists expenses for the Brethren's night work, a euphemism for tunnel repairs after a collapsed passage nearly exposed a cache of intercepted letters. Elsewhere, a bishop's furious edict bans monks from carrying worldly news, a sure sign of how pervasive the problem had become. Even the architecture hints at deception: staircases that lead nowhere, altars with hollow bases, and scriptoriums positioned directly above tunnel junctions for quick disposal of sensitive materials. The legacy of these monk spies endures in surprising ways. Modern intelligence agencies still study their tradecraft, the use of trusted identities, dead drops, and compartmentalized networks. But perhaps their greatest lesson was in the art of patience. A monk could spend years gaining a ruler's confidence before passing a single crucial detail. In the slow burn of medieval espionage, faith wasn't just a cover, it was the ultimate long game. And in the silence of those tunnels, history was rewritten one whispered secret at a time. History remembers the monks who carved these tunnels, but beneath their stories runs another, one written by the hands of women. Convents across medieval Europe weren't just passive shelters, they were hubs of defiance, with abbesses and nuns mastering the art of subterranean survival. Take the case of St. Clare's Convent in Assisi, where sisters dug a hidden route to a nearby vineyard after local lords demanded they house soldiers. When armed men arrived at their gates, the nuns vanished underground, emerging miles away to continue their work in secret. This wasn't isolation, it was strategy. Some of the most ingenious uses of tunnels centered on protecting women's society had cast aside. In 12th century England, convents like Wilton Abbey became sanctuaries for noblewomen fleeing forced marriages. Chronicles tell of Lady Margaret de Lacy, who slipped through a tunnel disguised as a laundress while her furious fiancé paced the cloister above. Elsewhere, in Saxony, abbesses turned tunnels into smuggling routes for abused wives, guiding them to distant safe houses under cover of darkness. These passages weren't just physical escapes, they were rebellions against a world that treated women as property. What's remarkable is how nuns weaponized their piety. Male authorities rarely searched convents thoroughly, assuming sacred spaces couldn't harbor secrets. That blind spot allowed abbesses like Hildegard of Bingen to hide entire families during peasant uprisings. Her tunnel system, linked to natural caves, stored not just people but forbidden texts, including her own writings on medicine, which churchmen later tried to suppress. The tunnels, in her case, preserved knowledge as much as lives. Then there were the fighters. In Catalonia, during the Albigensian Crusade, Cistercian nuns used tunnels to funnel supplies to besieged Cathar women. At Montségur, legends speak of a white shadow, a nun who navigated pitch-black passages to lead refugees past enemy lines. These women didn't just hide, they orchestrated resistance, proving that courage thrives in darkness as well as light. The true testament to their legacy lies in the walls themselves. In the tunnels beneath Chelles' Abbey near Paris, archaeologists found small crosses carved at child height, likely by young novices alongside grooves from countless fingertips brushing the stone over centuries. These silent marks remind us, while history wrote monks into the spotlight, women kept the tunnels alive, one whispered prayer, one guided step, one act of quiet rebellion at a time. For devout travelers in the Middle Ages, pilgrimage wasn't just a journey. It was a trial by fire, with bandits lurking on forest roads and winter storms threatening exposure. But beneath these dangers ran a hidden alternative, tunnels that transformed perilous treks into sacred passages. Stretching between monasteries and shrines, these subterranean routes offered more than just shelter. They turned the act of walking into a form of prayer, where every step through darkness brought pilgrims closer to the divine. The tunnels beneath Canterbury Cathedral tell this story vividly. Pilgrims traveling to Thomas Becket's shrine could enter a labyrinth marked with small niches holding candles and carved reliefs of saints. These weren't just waypoints, they were stations for contemplation, mirroring the stations of the cross. A traveler might pause at a depiction of Saint Christopher, patron of safe journeys, before inching forward through passages so narrow they had to proceed single file, a physical echo of humility. By the time they emerged into the cathedral's crypt, the transition from darkness to light mirrored their spiritual awakening. Some routes were grander in scale. The Via Sacra tunnels connecting Salzburg's monasteries formed an underground highway spanning nearly 15 miles, with vaulted ceilings tall enough for mounted riders. Along the route, pilgrims encountered light wells, shafts cut vertically to the surface, where sunlight at noon would illuminate a fresco of an angel or martyr. These moments of sudden radiance in the gloom were designed to evoke divine revelation, transforming a practical journey into a sensory sermon. What's striking is how these tunnels democratized pilgrimage. Wealthy travelers could afford armed escorts and sturdy wagons, but peasants and friars relied on the subterranean network's safety. In Spain's Camino de Santiago, side tunnels branched from the main route to remote hermitages, allowing the poor to visit sacred sites without crossing bandit-controlled lands. The tunnels became great equalizers where a merchant and a beggar might share bread in a candlelit alcove, united by faith rather than divided by class. The spiritual symbolism ran deep. Darkness wasn't feared but embraced as a metaphor for doubt and struggle. In Chartres' labyrinthine tunnels, pilgrims followed grooves worn into the floor by countless predecessors, a tangible reminder that they walked a path trodden by generations of believers. Some tunnels even incorporated acoustic tricks. Whispers would carry along curved walls as if the stones themselves were repeating scripture. Modern walkers retracing these routes still report an uncanny feeling, as if the tunnels remember their purpose. In Austria's Admont Abbey, where a tunnel once linked to a nearby miraculous spring, visitors describe a palpable shift in energy when passing certain carvings of outstretched hands. Whether psychological or mystical, the effect underscores how these passages were engineered not just for feet, but for souls. The true destination wasn't the shrine at the end, it was the transformation that happened along the way. Medieval maps of these tunnel systems were works of art in deception, crumbling parchments filled with deliberate misdirections and symbols that only the initiated could interpret. A spiral might mark a hidden chamber, while intersecting lines could indicate a false wall. The few surviving examples, like the 12th century Mappa Claustri from Cluny Abbey, show tunnels drawn as delicate veins beneath stylized buildings, their true scale disguised among illustrations of saints and mythical beasts. Some maps were even designed to self-destruct, Ink made from oak gall would fade over time, leaving behind only faint traces of crucial passageways. Disguised entrances were masterclasses in blending sacred architecture with secrecy. At the Abbey of Saint Denis near Paris, a statue of the Virgin Mary pivoted on a hidden axis, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. In Portugal's Alcobaça Monastery, builders embedded a tunnel door within a fresco of the Last Judgment, its outline camouflaged among the swirling robes of angels. The most ingenious might be the Weeping Wall at Hungary's Pannonhalma Archabbey, where a seemingly damp patch of stone concealed a hollow space behind it. When pressed in the right sequence, the stones would swing open, silent as a prayer. The real mystery lies in how many of these entrances remain undiscovered. In 2018, restorers at Worcester Cathedral stumbled upon a narrow shaft behind a choir stall, its walls worn smooth by generations of hands gripping hidden rungs. Similar accidents have revealed tunnels beneath bakeries in Toledo and wine cellars in Burgundy, their original purposes long forgotten. Even modern technology struggles to spot them. Radar scans near Scotland's Dryburgh Abbey detected anomalies that turned out to be a tunnel entrance masked by a perfectly fitted slab of moss-covered stone. Historians now believe these hidden doors served as more than just practical escapes. They were psychological weapons, knowing that enemies could be listening from behind any wall-bred paranoia. A single loose brick in a monastery cellar might lead to a spy's listening post or a rebel's cache of weapons. The very uncertainty became a form of defense as potent as any iron gate. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson these tunnels teach us. Sometimes the most powerful secrets aren't those buried deepest, but those hiding in the light, waiting for the right hand to brush aside the dust of centuries. Long before medieval monks carved their hidden labyrinths, the roots of these subterranean sanctuaries stretched back to Rome's shadowy catacombs. Those early Christian burial tunnels weren't just resting places for the dead, they were blueprints for survival. When persecution swept through the empire, followers of the new faith gathered in these underground chambers to worship in secret, their voices muffled by layers of earth. The walls, lined with graves, bore witness to whispered prayers and hastily painted symbols, anchors, fish, and crosses disguised as everyday objects. What began as a refuge for the condemned became a masterclass in covert spaces, setting the stage for 1,000 years of hidden architecture. The leap from Roman catacombs to monastic tunnels wasn't immediate, but the DNA is unmistakable. Medieval builders adopted the same principles: narrow passages to bottleneck invaders, false corridors to confuse pursuers, and hidden chambers just large enough to shelter precious treasures. Take the catacombs of St. Calixtus, where twisting paths spiral like a snail's shell. Centuries later, that same spiral pattern reappeared in the tunnels beneath Cluny Abbey, designed to disorient anyone without a guide. Even the air shafts mirror ancient models. Roman engineers used vertical ducts to ventilate their burial chambers, while medieval monks perfected the technique, angling shafts to disguise their purpose from observers above ground. But where the catacombs were static, meant to preserve the past, monastic tunnels pulsed with life. Beneath Canterbury, scribes copied manuscripts by candlelight in chambers modeled after Rome's cubicula, the small rooms where early Christians once broke bread. The difference: these new tunnels were arteries, not in points. Where catacombs dead ended in burial niches, monastic passages branched like roots, linking abbeys to forests, rivers, and neighboring towns. The Cistercians took it further, embedding their tunnels with running water systems inspired by Roman aqueducts, turning survival holes into livable spaces. The most poignant link between these worlds lies in the symbols. In Rome's catacombs, a simple fish scratched into plaster might mark a secret meeting spot. In medieval tunnels, that same fish appears, but now alongside coded directions to rebel hideouts. The language of the oppressed had evolved, but the need for secrecy remained. Even the materials whispered of continuity. Builders repurposed Roman bricks salvaged from ruins, weaving the old empire's bones into new sanctuaries. Walking these passages, you can almost feel the thread connecting a 3rd century deacon hiding from imperial guards to a 15th century monk smuggling books beneath a king's nose. What medieval engineers grasped and perfected was the psychological power of these spaces. Roman catacombs offered refuge, but monastic tunnels weaponized it. A single concealed entrance could unnerve an entire army, leaving them to wonder where or when their enemies might emerge. That legacy endures in the way we imagine secret passages today, not just as hiding spots, but as instruments of quiet revolution. The stones, remember, press your palm against their cool surface, and you're touching the fingerprints of 2 eras, united by the same defiant whisper, "We are here, even when you cannot see us." The quiet tunnels that once echoed with prayers sometimes roared with the sounds of war. While monks designed these passageways for sanctuary, armies soon recognized their potential as weapons. Skilled sappers, men who specialized in tunneling, could turn a monastery's hidden corridors into a deadly advantage. Picture this: under cover of darkness, soldiers would dig outward from existing monastic tunnels, burrowing beneath an enemy's fortress walls. Once deep enough, they'd pack the chamber with flammable brush or barrels of oil, ignite it, and collapse the foundations above in a thunderous explosion of stone and dust. A sanctuary built for peace could become, in desperate times, a launchpad for destruction. One of the most infamous examples comes from the siege of Rochester Castle in 1215. Rebel barons holed up inside the fortress thought their walls were impregnable until King John's forces discovered a disused monastic tunnel leading from a nearby abbey. Sappers widened the passage, propped up the castle's foundation with wooden beams, and set them ablaze. The resulting collapse brought down an entire corner of the fortress, forcing the defenders to surrender. The same tunnels that had once carried sacred relics now delivered fire and conquest, but not all adaptations were so violent. In border regions like Wales, rebels repurposed monastic tunnels as communication lines. A network beneath Strata, Florida Abbey became a covert messaging system during Owain Glyndwr's uprising against English rule. Scouts could travel undetected for miles, emerging near enemy camps to gather intelligence or coordinate attacks. The tunnel's original purpose, connecting sacred spaces, made them ideal for moving unseen through contested lands. The real twist: some monastic orders actively participated in these adaptations. During the Albigensian Crusade, Cistercian monks in southern France fortified their tunnels with iron gates and murder holes, turning them into defensive choke points. At Poblet Abbey in Catalonia, records show monks storing weapons in hidden chambers, ready to defend their walls or launch counterattacks. This blurring of roles, holy men as military strategists, reveals how even the most peaceful spaces adapted when survival was at stake. What's haunting is how easily sacred blueprints became tools of war. The same ventilation shafts that kept monks alive during sieges could funnel smoke into enemy strongholds. Storage niches meant for sacred texts held gunpowder. Even the acoustic tricks designed to carry chants could amplify the footsteps of approaching soldiers. The tunnels, in the end, were neither good nor evil, just stone and earth, waiting for human hands to give them purpose. Their legacy reminds us that the line between sanctuary and battlefield is often thinner than we'd like to believe. When invaders stormed a monastery, the greatest treasures weren't always gold or relics, they were words. Hidden beneath flickering candlelight, monks hurriedly lowered chests of manuscripts into tunnels, each parchment more precious than jewels. These weren't just books, they were the fragile threads connecting antiquity to the Renaissance, carrying the voices of Aristotle, Cicero, and St. Augustine across centuries that might have otherwise silenced them. Consider the Abbey of Bobbio in northern Italy, where monks sealed an entire library behind a false wall during Lombard raids. The chamber remained lost until 1800, when a landslide exposed its entrance, revealing shelves still stacked with codices, including the earliest surviving copy of Pliny's Natural History. The pages were perfectly preserved, their inks vibrant, as if the scribes had stepped away moments before. Similar hoards surfaced across Europe. Beneath Salzburg's catacombs, a psalter from the 8th century was found wrapped in oilcloth, its pages uncorrupted by damp. At Lorsch Abbey, laborers digging a cellar broke into a tunnel lined with lead tubes, each containing a scroll dipped in wax for waterproofing. The logistics of these hidden libraries were staggering. Monks developed intricate catalog systems, etching symbols onto tunnel walls to mark where specific texts were buried. Some used numerical codes corresponding to abbey ledgers, while others relied on biblical verses as mnemonics. At St. Gaul, grooves in the tunnel floor still trace the paths of wheeled carts used to move entire bookshelves underground. The most ingenious might be the breathing shelves of Monte Cassino, racks suspended on ropes to keep manuscripts above flooding, with hollow reeds inserted into walls to regulate humidity. Preservation was only half the battle. During the Viking siege of Lindisfarne in 793, monks reportedly smuggled manuscripts out through tidal tunnels, timing their escapes to the ebb and flow of the sea. In Spain's Pyrenees, scribes fleeing Moorish armies carried vellum sheets sewn into their robes, rewriting texts from memory in mountain caves. The risk was unimaginable. Capture often meant death, but the alternative was unthinkable. As one chronicler wrote, "To lose a book is to erase a generation's voice." The impact of these hidden libraries still echoes today. Nearly 1/3 of surviving classical Latin texts exist solely because monastic tunnels sheltered them. When scholars at Charlemagne's court sought ancient knowledge, they didn't dig through ruins, they sent letters to abbots, asking what treasures might lie beneath their feet. Even the layout of modern libraries owes a debt to these medieval hideaways. The Vatican's secret archives still use a shelving system adapted from tunnel storage methods. What's haunting is how close we came to losing it all. In 1244, Mongol troops burned the tunnels beneath Kiev's monasteries, unaware they were incinerating the only copies of Slavic epics. At Clonmacnoise, a chieftain's raid destroyed 800 manuscripts in a single night. Their charred fragments still cling to tunnel walls like shadows. Yet for every tragedy, there's a miracle. The palimpsest scratched away by a 9th century scribe, then rediscovered centuries later beneath ultraviolet light, its original words shimmering back to life. These tunnels remind us that knowledge is never truly safe. It needs protectors, people willing to crouch in damp darkness, guarding pages they may never live to see read. The next time you hold a translation of Plato or gaze at a medieval manuscript's illuminated borders, remember, the reason it exists might be because someone, somewhere, once loved it enough to bury it deep. Modern explorers who venture into these ancient tunnels walk a delicate tightrope between discovery and preservation. Urban spelunkers armed with headlamps and archaeologists wielding laser scanners share the same dilemma: how to uncover history without erasing it. Every footstep in these fragile passageways risks collapsing ceilings or scuffing away centuries-old markings. In Prague, an explorer's misstep in the late 1990s caused a tunnel beneath Strahov Monastery to cave in, burying a section decorated with medieval graffiti. The incident sparked outrage among local historians, who argued that some corridors should remain sealed rather than become casualties of curiosity. Yet the lure of these hidden worlds is undeniable. When researchers in Austria used non-invasive ground-penetrating radar to map the tunnels beneath Egmont Abbey, they discovered a chamber lined with lead tablets, each etched with musical notations for lost Gregorian chants. The find rewrote our understanding of medieval music, but it also raised questions. Should the tablets be removed for study or left undisturbed in their original context? Descendant communities often have strong opinions. In Ireland, Cistercian monks still maintain the tunnels beneath Mellifont Abbey as sacred spaces, urging archaeologists to limit excavations to areas outside their active prayer routes. The debate grows even more complex when human remains are involved. Beneath Budapest's castle district, tunnels used by Franciscan monks during Ottoman sieges yielded skeletal remains in 2012, some showing signs of violent death. While scientists pushed for DNA analysis to identify the dead, local clergy insisted on reburial without disturbance. The compromise, a painstaking documentation process where each bone was photographed in situ before being carefully interred nearby. It's a poignant reminder that these tunnels aren't just historical sites, they're someone's final resting place. Technology offers middle ground. LiDAR scanning and 3D modeling now allow researchers to virtually excavate tunnels too unstable to enter. In Scotland's Orkney Islands, drones have mapped Neolithic tunnels linked to later monastic networks, creating digital twins that scholars worldwide can study without ever touching the original stone. But even this approach has critics. Some argue that pixelated reconstructions lack the tactile connection of running fingers over tool marks left by a 9th century mason's chisel. Perhaps the most pressing ethical question concerns publicity. When a YouTube explorer filmed himself crawling through Welsh rebel tunnels in 2019, the video went viral, and within weeks, souvenir hunters had stripped the walls of carved symbols. Conversely, keeping discoveries secret risks losing them to decay or development. The solution may lie in guarded collaboration, like Portugal's Alcobaça Monastery project, where trained locals monitor tunnels while academics document them. After all, these passageways have survived this long because someone, somewhere, chose to protect them. The real challenge isn't just uncovering history, it's knowing when to let some shadows stay undisturbed. The next chapter in uncovering these hidden networks lies not in shovels and pickaxes, but in beams of light and lines of code. Archaeologists are now wielding LiDAR scanners that peer through layers of soil and vegetation like X-ray vision, revealing tunnel outlines invisible to the naked eye. In the forests surrounding Burgos, Spain, this technology recently exposed a branching network beneath an unassuming hillside tunnels that connected 3 forgotten monasteries across 12 miles of rugged terrain. What once would have required decades of risky excavation now unfolds on computer screens, with millimeter-perfect renderings of passageways untouched for centuries. Artificial intelligence adds another layer to this revolution. Machine learning algorithms trained on known tunnel patterns can predict where undiscovered passages might lie, analyzing subtle dips in terrain or anomalies in soil composition. At Mont St. Michel, AI analysis of medieval financial records cross-referenced with satellite imagery pinpointed a previously unknown storage tunnel beneath the Abbey's bakery. The system noticed recurring payments for stone deliveries that didn't match any known construction projects, leading researchers straight to a vault filled with perfectly preserved 14th century grain sacks. But the most exciting advances are collaborative. Citizen science initiatives now enlist local communities as partners in discovery. In Transylvania, villagers armed with smartphone apps document strange echoes in their cellars or unusual patterns in crop growth, clues that professionals might overlook. One farmer's report about a perpetually damp patch in his vineyard led to the uncovering of a monastic icehouse tunnel, its walls still lined with ancient straw insulation. These grassroots efforts bridge the gap between high-tech tools and centuries-old oral traditions, where folktales about hollow hills often conceal kernels of truth. The ethical dimension of these discoveries grows more nuanced with each breakthrough. Ground-penetrating radar might expose a rebel hideout, but should researchers publicize its location if descendants of those rebels still live nearby? In Cyprus, archaeologists use 3D printing to create replicas of fragile tunnel artifacts, allowing originals to remain undisturbed while still sharing knowledge. Meanwhile, blockchain technology helps track digital scans of sensitive sites, ensuring access is granted only to vetted scholars, a modern solution to the ancient problem of protecting secrets. What's emerging is a new golden age of tunnel archaeology, one where technology doesn't replace human curiosity but amplifies it. The dirt beneath our feet may hide more connections than we ever imagined. Links between monasteries and castles, between persecuted minorities and sympathetic towns, between the living and the long gone. As these tools grow sharper, we're not just finding tunnels, we're reconstructing an entire subterranean world that shaped history from below, and the most thrilling realization: the next great discovery might already be hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right combination of innovation and intuition to bring it back into the light. The shadowy corridors of monastic tunnels have long escaped the confines of history, weaving their way into the stories we tell and the games we play. Umberto Eco's The Name of the Rose didn't just resurrect the atmosphere of a medieval abbey, it buried its most chilling secrets beneath the floorboards, where labyrinthine passages hid heretical texts and lurking danger. The novel's fictional tunnels, though imagined, pulse with the same claustrophobic tension real monks must have felt, their flickering torches casting shadows on walls that seem to whisper warnings. Eco understood what makes these spaces so compelling. They're physical manifestations of secrecy itself, where truth and deception twist together in the dark. Video games have taken that intrigue and made it visceral. In Assassin's Creed Valhalla, players slip through moss-covered tunnels beneath English monasteries, dodging guards to steal relics or uncover coded messages. The game's designers didn't just borrow the aesthetics of real monastic tunnels, they captured their logic. Hidden levers, acoustically odd chambers, and sudden dead ends mirror the very tricks medieval builders used. Even the ambient details feel authentic, the way torchlight pools unevenly on rough stone, or how distant drips of water amplify the isolation. These digital recreations do more than entertain. They let players inhabit the cleverness and fear that shaped these spaces. But pop culture's fascination isn't just about adventure. Films like The Pillars of the Earth use tunnels to symbolize the hidden forces driving history, the clandestine meetings of power brokers, the smuggled knowledge that topples regimes. When a character ducks behind a tapestry to vanish into the walls, it's a visual metaphor for the unseen networks that truly shaped the medieval world. Even horror leans into the tunnel's eerie potential. The Silent Hill series turns monastic-inspired passageways into psychological mazes, where the real monsters are the secrets buried there centuries ago. What ties these portrayals together is their respect for the tunnel's dual nature as both sanctuary and trap. In Kingdom Come: Deliverance, a player might use a hidden route to escape pursuing soldiers, only to stumble upon a skeleton clutching a rusted key, a silent reminder that not everyone who entered these passages left alive. That balance of hope and peril is what keeps creators coming back. Whether in novels, films, or games, monastic tunnels aren't just settings. They're characters in their own right, full of whispers, warnings, and the weight of centuries. And with every new story that borrows their shadows, the legacy of those real-life passageways grows richer, proving that some histories refuse to stay buried. Today, the fragile remnants of these underground worlds are shielded by more than just stone and secrecy. They're guarded by global recognition. UNESCO has designated sites like Mont Saint-Michel and the Alcobossa Monastery as World Heritage Treasures, placing their labyrinthine tunnels under international protection. But preserving these passageways is no simple task. Centuries of erosion, groundwater seepage, and even the vibrations of modern traffic threaten to collapse corridors that once withstood sieges. Conservation teams now employ cutting-edge techniques to combat decay, injecting stabilizing resins into cracked walls and installing humidity sensors to monitor delicate microclimates. At Portugal's Sintra tunnels, engineers devised an ingenious solution, transplanting colonies of bioluminescent fungi onto the ceilings, creating natural lighting that doesn't damage medieval stonework like artificial bulbs would. Public access presents another challenge. While some tunnels welcome visitors like those beneath Vienna's Michaelerkirche, where glass walkways let tourists float above ancient footprints, others remain strictly off-limits to prevent accidental damage. In Canterbury, docents lead flashlight tours through a single stabilized branch of the cathedral's tunnel network, while the rest stay sealed to all but researchers. The compromise, virtual reality reconstructions that let anyone walk through digitally mapped passages, complete with projections showing how monks once used them. Local communities have become unexpected allies in preservation. In Bavaria's Altmuhltal region, villagers formed a tunnel watch program after vandals defaced medieval carvings. Now, retired teachers and students take turns monitoring remote entrances, reporting cracks or suspicious activity. Their efforts paid off when quick thinking by a watch volunteer prevented a cave-in near Regensburg, spotting telltale fissures that automated sensors had missed. Perhaps the most heartening preservation stories come from war zones. Despite shelling during the Yugoslav wars, Franciscan monks in Bosnia-Herzegovina risked their lives to reinforce tunnel ceilings with salvaged timber, saving both the physical structures and the priceless manuscripts hidden within. Similarly, Ukrainian heritage teams have been racing to document monastic tunnels near front lines, creating 3D backups in case of destruction. These acts underscore a timeless truth. People will always fight to protect spaces that harbor their history. Education fuels these efforts. At Ireland's Clonmacnoise Visitor Centre, children grind pigments using medieval recipes to illuminate replica tunnel maps, connecting physically with the past. In Austria, archivists have turned tunnel graffiti into an interactive database, cross-referencing carvings with historical events to reconstruct forgotten narratives. Every stabilized stone and shared story ensures these underground sanctuaries remain not just as relics, but as living classrooms, where the past whispers its lessons to those willing to listen. Even after decades of excavation and research, these underground passageways guard their deepest secrets with stubborn silence. One of the most tantalizing puzzles is whether isolated tunnels were actually threads in a vast, coordinated web stretching across borders. Recent LiDAR scans in the Alsace region revealed uncanny similarities between tunnel construction techniques in monasteries 200 miles apart. Identical arch supports, matching ventilation shaft angles, even the same unusual method of reinforcing corners with oak wedges. Were these coincidences or proof of a shadowy medieval engineering guild sharing knowledge? The discovery of coded symbols carved at tunnel junctions repeating patterns of circles and lines found from Burgundy to Bohemia hints at some organized system, but without a Rosetta Stone to decipher them, we can only speculate. Then there are the gaps in the historical record that suggest deliberate erasure. In 1892, a fire at the Vatican archives destroyed documents rumored to contain a map of subterranean Christendom. Fragments salvaged from the blaze-mentioned tunnel routes linking Rome to Santiago de Compostela, but the full scope remains maddeningly out of reach. Even more intriguing are the persistent legends of sealed chambers like the rumored Black Library beneath Wittenberg, where Martin Luther allegedly hid controversial texts in monastic tunnels during the Reformation. Ground-penetrating radar has detected hollow spaces there, but local authorities have blocked excavations, citing structural risks. The holy grail for many researchers is the possibility of undiscovered relics. Byzantine chronicles speak of a second Jerusalem treasure, gold and sacred objects smuggled through tunnels during the Crusades, that never resurfaced. In 2017, a shepherd in the French Pyrenees stumbled upon a tunnel entrance lined with 12th century Frankish coins, fueling speculation they marked a cache site. But the passage collapsed before archaeologists could explore further, leaving another question forever buried. Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't what's hidden, but why some tunnels were deliberately sabotaged. At Fountains Abbey in England, entire sections were filled with rubble in the 1500s, not by invaders but by the monks themselves. Was it to conceal something or to protect against something? The answers may lie in coded marginalia found in a ledger at York Minster, referencing a darkness best left walled. Until technology allows us to peer through stone without disturbing it, some secrets will keep their silence. What keeps historians awake at night are the whispers of tunnels that defy explanation. The account of a 19th century miner who broke into a perfectly round chamber beneath Maulbronn Monastery, its walls covered in metallic paint that still glowed faintly after centuries in the dark. Or the Welsh folklore of singing tunnels, where certain stones emit tones when struck, a phenomenon later confirmed in a side passage at Strata, Florida, though no one can explain how medieval builders engineered it. These anomalies remind us that for every mystery solved, two more emerge from the shadows. The allure isn't just about finding answers, it's about the thrill of the search itself. Modern explorers armed with drones and AI might uncover a vault tomorrow, or we might spend another century piecing together fragments. But that uncertainty is what makes these tunnels immortal. They're not just relics of the past, they're conversations across time, inviting us to lean closer and listen for the next whisper in the dark. Beneath the weight of centuries, these tunnels whisper timeless truths about human resilience. The monks and rebels who carved them didn't just dig to hide, they built to outlast. Every chisel mark was an act of defiance against forces that sought to erase them, whether invading armies or oppressive regimes. Their ingenuity wasn't just technical, it was philosophical. They understood that survival isn't always about standing tall. Sometimes it's about knowing when to disappear into the earth and wait for the storm to pass. That lesson feels eerily modern in an era where digital footprints are permanent and privacy feels like a relic. Consider how these tunnels functioned as early decentralized networks. Unlike castles that relied on towering walls, the strength of these passageways lay in their obscurity. No single point could destroy the system because the knowledge of their routes was dispersed among trusted individuals. It's a stark contrast to today's centralized data hubs, vulnerable to single-point failures, the medieval equivalent of a server crash, collapsing one tunnel entrance, only to have three more emerge elsewhere. Their resilience came from redundancy, a principle cybersecurity experts now champion as zero-trust architecture. The communal aspect is equally striking. These weren't solitary hideouts, they thrived on collective trust. Rebels relied on farmers to leave cellar doors unlocked. Monks counted on neighboring abbeys to shelter fleeing brothers, and entire villages became complicit in silence. That interdependence mirrors modern movements where marginalized groups use encrypted apps and underground networks to organize under oppressive regimes. The tools have changed: signal instead of candlelight, cryptocurrencies instead of buried coin hoards, but the human instinct to protect community endures. Perhaps the most profound legacy is their adaptability. A tunnel dug to save scriptures during a Viking raid might later hide Jewish families during the Inquisition, then store contraband pamphlets during the Enlightenment. The spaces themselves were neutral. It was human courage that gave them purpose. Today, as we grapple with surveillance capitalism and algorithmic oppression, their example challenges us. How do we build systems flexible enough to serve justice across generations? The answer might lie in their quiet wisdom, not in fighting power head-on, but in crafting alternatives so subtle they're invisible until the moment they're needed. These passageways remind us that resistance isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the almost imperceptible scrape of stone against stone in the dark, the patient redirection of a river's flow, or the decision to memorize a text rather than risk writing it down. In a world obsessed with visibility, their greatest lesson might be the power of staying unseen until the right moment to step into the light. The forgotten tunnel networks of medieval Europe are more than just historical curiosities. They are testaments to human creativity and endurance. These silent passageways, carved by candlelight and desperation, remind us that survival often depends on the willingness to dig deeper, literally and metaphorically. Think about the monks who spent decades hollowing out the earth to protect sacred texts, or the rebels who turned these corridors into arteries of resistance. Every inch of stone tells a story of quiet defiance, proving that sometimes the most powerful revolutions happen in the dark. What's remarkable is how these tunnels blur the lines between sacred and subversive. A passage built to save lives during a Viking raid might later hide forbidden ideas during the Reformation, then shelter families in wartime. Their purpose evolved with each crisis, reflecting humanity's endless ability to adapt. Even now, as archaeologists uncover new branches with ground-penetrating radar, we're forced to reconsider what we know about medieval Europe. The history we've been taught was just the surface, literally. Beneath castles and cathedrals, an entire shadow world thrived, shaping events in ways we're only beginning to grasp. These tunnels also challenge our modern obsession with visibility. In an age where every thought is broadcast online, there's something humbling about spaces designed to leave no trace. The builders understood the power of silence, that preserving an idea sometimes means burying it until the world is ready to listen. Whether it was a scribe smuggling an ancient manuscript or a rebel plotting in whispers, their legacies survived precisely because they knew when to disappear. As we step back into the light, remember that the earth still holds secrets. For every tunnel we've mapped, there are dozens more waiting beneath fields, forests, and city streets. Some might lead to lost libraries or forgotten sanctuaries. Others could rewrite entire chapters of history. The real magic lies in the search itself, in knowing that the past is never truly past, just hidden in plain sight. So the next time you walk across an old abbey's ruins or a quiet countryside, take a moment to wonder, what stories are still murmuring beneath your feet? The adventure isn't over. It's simply waiting for the next curious mind to pick up the thread. If these echoes of the underground have sparked your imagination, Share your own theories about history's unsolved mysteries in the comments. And for more journeys into the shadows of the past, don't forget to subscribe because the best stories are often the ones buried.